How would you like a 15% discount to my daily email, the stack of stuff, the show notes, discounts to the conference, all of that? All you need to do is text the word show to 33777. You'll get the annual subscription with a 15% discount to my daily email. You'll get the stack of stuff, the links to the show notes, discounts to the conference, and so much more. All you have to do is text the word show, SHOW, to 33777. Text show to 33777.
Welcome to the Eric Erickson Show podcast, Hour 3.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls across the fruited plain, it is Eric Erickson here nationwide, and I'm delighted to have you with me. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you would like to be on the program, you're more than welcome to. As always, if you text Eric, E-R-I-C-K, to 33777, you can get the live stream, the show notes, the podcast, the you name it. Follow me around social media. Happy to have you with me. Now, we very, very rarely have guests, and here we had Lieutenant Governor of Georgia yesterday and Georgia Secretary of State today talking about the must-win swing state. But one of my favorite members of the United States Senate reached out and is barnstorming across the nation, trying to get Republicans elected to the Senate, and he turns out to have a contest in his own state with his fellow Republican senator, Senator Fisher, and wanted to get him on to talk about what's going on out there. Senator Pete Ricketts joining me from Nebraska. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing great, Eric. Thanks very much for having me on.
Sure. So before we get nationwide with these Senate fights, let's talk about Nebraska, because I don't think that the Republicans are going to lose that seat myself, but there sure does seem to be some buzz out there about it being more contested than people thought.
Well, first of all, Eric, am I really one of your favorite members of the United States Senate? Because that's really nice if that's true.
Yes, you are one of my favorite governors. And I got to say this, first of all, I love your father. He is one of the nicest people I know. And your whole family has been so kind to me over the years. I've never actually been to Nebraska, but you were one of my favorite governors. You were such a great reformer out there. And yes, you're one of my favorite senators.
Well, thank you very much. And my dad is one of my heroes. So, and he can be very nice to people. So it's awesome that you think so too. But yes, as crazy it might sound, that Deb Fischer's race here in Nebraska is competitive. And I think part of it goes back to, Nebraska has been a part of the prairie populist movement for over 100 years. And Nebraskans do like people who, think their mind, say what they think. And this guy that's running against her is really trying to portray himself as independent and is, outside of D.C. and that sort of thing. He's running some very slick ads. But people shouldn't be fooled by it. Even though he's got these slick ads and, he's a union guy and he's talking about, like welding things and that sort of stuff. If you look at where he's getting his money, he's getting it from all the Democrat players, right? It's George Soros and George Soros-backed organizations. It's Hollywood. It's Act Blue is who's funding him. And if you look at his policies are also very Democrat, right? He is for abortion, right? He is for boys playing in girls' sports and going into girls' bathrooms. He wants amnesty for illegals. He wants to give them Social Security cards. He said there should be a pathway to citizenship. So if you look at his policies and you look at his money, they always say follow the money, you can tell this guy's a Democrat. And what he did is he came in, he got out early and started advertising and has been out. And because the Democrats always have a money advantage over us as Republicans, he's been out spending Deb on TV and, saying he's an independent. And what we need to do is just make sure that Republicans come home to Deb, understand that she's the only real conservative. In fact, this guy is actually running ads right now with people who say they're going to vote for Trump and then are voting for him. But, again, people shouldn't be fooled here. Go look at his money. Go look at his policies. Here's another thing that's really frustrating me, Eric, is that he's been saying, I'm not going to caucus with either Republicans or Democrats when I go to Washington.
Right.
He's lying. He is absolutely lying to the people of Nebraska to their faces, because here's the deal. You only get committee assignments if you caucus with one side or the other. In fact, a Democrat PAC last night put out a fundraising thing saying Dan was going to caucus with the Democrats. But they're only saying what we all know, which is Dan's lying. He's going to caucus, and he's going to caucus with the Democrats because that's where his money's coming from.
Yeah, it definitely is. I'm glad that it looks like the polling trends out there, people have realized what's going on. But now we've got this weird thing, that nothing ever breaks randomly towards the end of these sorts of things. Voters across the country, not just in one precinct in one state, tend to shift, and we're seeing this wild shift in the polling from even a place like New Mexico in Nevada, where I don't know that the Republicans can pick up a seat like the New Mexico Senate seat, but it went from being a 10-point race for the Democrats to a 5-point race. In Pennsylvania now, suddenly it's a toss-up. Michigan and Wisconsin are as well. Even Sam Brown, who I love the guy out in Nevada, is starting to close well there. It just seems like there's been this momentum shift towards your team in the Senate.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. It's also happening for President Trump. I mean, if you look at President Trump's race, it's been very stable through most of the summer and early fall, but now we're seeing movement in states like Pennsylvania and Michigan for President Trump. And I do think that this is, if this momentum continues, obviously 24 hours is forever in politics, and we got like 6 more of those 24-hour periods between now and Election Day. So you never know what's going to happen. But to me, it looks like I'm cautiously optimistic for President Trump that this is actually, the momentum is going to swing this way, and he's going to win 6 out of 7 of these swing states. And if you look at our Senate candidates, we're going to win West Virginia. We're looking really good in Montana. Bernie Moreno is up in Ohio. And then you just pointed out, if you look at some of these other states, Eric Hovde in Wisconsin's up by a point, and granted, that's margin of error stuff, but he's up by a point. Mike Rogers in Michigan's only down a point. David McCormick is only down a point in Pennsylvania. And then, you talk about New Mexico. Nella Domenici is a fantastic candidate. And I agree, the voter registration advantage in New Mexico is really tough. But, her father, Pete, was very popular there, and she is really, really good. I also love Sam Brown. What a great American story, right? Serves our country, injured by an IED. His nurse that took care of him becomes his wife. He's got a beautiful family. Just, again, a man who's served our country well. And he's got, again, he's closing in New Mexico. So we've got a lot of opportunities. And by the way, I would never count Larry Hogan out in Maryland. Right. That guy also closes well. And he was a very popular governor in Maryland. Larry and I got elected at the same time, so I'm a big fan of Larry's. So, I mean, we got lots of great pickup opportunities. And I think that, again, with the momentum shifting toward Trump, and I got to tell you, Eric, here in Nebraska, I've tried a couple times to go vote early at my local election commission's office. The lines have been an hour and a half long. Wow. And I'm told by folks that it's 2-1 Republicans showing up. So I think that the message is getting out to Republicans to get out and vote early, and that is also going to be very, very good for us to bank these votes before Election Day.
Now, let me switch gears with you a little bit. You're on the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. We've got this wild situation shaping up now where the Ukrainians tell us the North Koreans are in Ukraine. I don't know that we've confirmed that. We know they're in Russia. Lloyd Austin says they're in Russia. But it seems like we do have this Eastern axis shaping up with Iran, North Korea, China, and Russia trying to destabilize an American-led order, trying to get the U.S. currency not to be the reserve currency. And it doesn't seem like the present administration is capable of dealing with that crisis.
They absolutely are not. I can tell you in my experience over the last 2 years on foreign relations that this administration is utterly incompetent, and it starts at the top. Joe Biden is absolutely weak. And look, let's call these folks out, right? When we're talking about Russia, China, North Korea, Iran, these are dictators. There's only one thing dictators respect, and that's strength. There's nobody in this country who thinks Putin would have invaded Ukraine if Trump had still been president, right? Because President Trump shows strength. He's willing to punch dictators in the nose. And that's what they have to understand, is if they're going to mess with us or our allies, they're going to be paying a steep penalty for it. And nobody believes that out of Joe Biden. And it's not just Joe Biden, right? It's Anthony Blinken. Nice man. But let me tell you, he has an absolutely naive view of the world where he thinks if we just give people enough money that they'll be nice to us. And that's not the way it works with dictators. You look at theocracies like Iran. Ali Khamenei believes there's a 12th Imam out there somewhere in a hole. And if that guy comes out, there's going to be a new caliphate in the Mideast. And there's nothing you can say to change his mind on that, right? So you can't give him enough money for him to be nice to us, and that's why Iran is just taking all this money that the Biden administration is giving them, over $100 billion in oil money, and pumping it into terrorist groups like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis. There's weakness. This appeasement-first foreign policy by the administration is encouraging these dictators to come after us and our allies, and it's making the world the most dangerous place it's been since World War II.
Now, I want to shift gears to you for Nebraska. So I'm not on a local station yet in Nebraska. We're talking a couple, but I've got this massive live stream audience, and I know I've got a lot of listeners listening in Nebraska. In fact, I'm pulling it up right now just to see, and we got a couple thousand people who listen out of Omaha on a daily basis, and you've got two competing amendments, it seems like, if I remember right, on abortion on the ballot out there. Can you talk about those?
Thanks. Yeah. So what's going on in Nebraska, actually what's going on nationally, is that the National Abortion Lobby has been trying to push these ballot initiatives in different states to enshrine the right to abortion in state constitutions. And they've been very successful, frankly. We're 0-7 in stopping them prior to this election cycle. So they're in a number of states this year, including Florida and Nebraska. In Nebraska, we've got a different strategy to try and defeat them because we haven't won yet. What we're doing is we've got a ballot initiative. It's a pro-life ballot initiative. It's basically our state law. It is protects babies after the first trimester. It's got exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. And like I said, it's our state law passed by our legislators. It's not being forced on us by outside pro-abortion lobby groups, right, and Planned Parenthood. The Planned Parenthood one, they keep trying to sound nice, like it's fetal viability. But if you read the language, it's really radical stuff. In fact, I talked to people. I said, read it. If you're confused about which ballot initiative to vote for, read it. The one that doesn't mention women is the one you want to vote against because these people are so woke, Eric. They can't even acknowledge that only women can have babies. Newsflash, I'm a biology major. Only women can have babies. So, but they can't even say that in their ballot initiative. They say all persons have a fundamental right to abortion. And with those first two words, all persons, what it means is it wipes out our parental consent laws. So because minors now have a right, which means you are now endangering minors. Sex traffickers will be able to coerce young women into the sex trade. And then when they get pregnant, we'll be able to take them to have abortions without parental consent, without law enforcement knowing. So it's putting young women at risk that way. It also, by the way, will give men the right to abortion, so men will be able to sue women to force them to have abortions. How is that protecting women? It also allows unlicensed abortionists to make the determination of whether or not the baby is viable, which means an unlicensed abortionist will be able to practice abortions up until the moment of birth. This is really, really radical stuff. People need to read the language and understand that what they're trying to peddle on us is something that is just so far left, it doesn't belong in Nebraska or any place else in this country. So we are working to educate people to let them know that 434 is the one you're for because it's our pro-life one, and 439 is the one you want to say no to because that's the one that's being driven by the National Abortion Lobby. It's all outside money that's driving this, and it's the one that's really radical. Again, unlicensed people deciding whether a baby's viable, doing away with our parental consent laws, and people always talk, like the left always talks about, wanting to have the right, exceptions for rape, incest, and life of the mother. Theirs doesn't even have that. So, this is really, really radical stuff.
All right, last question for you. This is the most important question. What do we do to get the Cubs in the World Series next year?
Man, I got to tell you, Eric, I thought that we were going to win the division this year. I was really disappointed that we came in second place, but 10 games back. Turns out Milwaukee's a lot better than we thought.
Yeah,
first
look,
step is we got to win the division.
I root for the Braves and the Cubs. I grew up a Cubs fan. I think I've told you before. And actually, your dad treated my dad and me to some great seats several years ago. It's one of the great memories I have with my dad, thanks to your family. And I'm a huge Cubs fan. Even though I root for the Braves, I love them. And going to the World Series for the Cubs just a few years ago, I'm ready for him to go back. Now that it's in my blood, I need him to go back again.
I'm ready to go back too. The whole thing is, and the teams are so good once you get to the playoffs that anything can happen. So our strategy is, hey, just get to the playoffs and then, take it one step at a time there. But like I said, I thought we were going to win the division this year. We obviously have some work to do. We also, and I'm not trying to sound like we're making excuses here, but we were one of the most injured teams when you're looking at our pitching staff, and that never helps. And one of the things, if you look at why we were so successful in 2015 and 2016, is we had very, very few injuries. In fact, I think in 2016 we went almost the entire season with no injuries. So that always makes a big difference in any ball club's performance.
Well, Senator, it's always good to talk to you. You really are one of my favorite senators, and not just because you're family in the Cubs. And
you're going to happen to be on the line with you right now. You're one of my favorite senators I'm talking to right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. At some point, I'm going to get out to Nebraska, too. So it's always great to hear from you.
Well, great, Eric. Thanks very much. And please come out to Nebraska. I love to show off my beautiful state. We got just the best place in the world. We love it.
I will do it. Take care. Senator Pete Ricketts, and side note there, so his dad owns the Cubs. His dad is a wonderful human being, and his whole family's fantastic. And yeah, he really is one of my favorite senators. He was one of the best governors in the states. God help him going to Washington, D.C., though, but he's been a great senator up there. Senator Pete Ricketts from Nebraska, out barnstorming the country right now, trying to deal with, of all things, the crazy ballot initiatives in Nebraska, competing abortion positions, and also trying to get Republicans elected to the U.S. Senate. Hello and welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. All right, that went long with Senator Ricketts. So we got folks who want to chime in here. You guys stand by. I've got a minute here. That's just not enough time to give you time to talk. So I will get your phone calls as soon as we come back on the other side. Quinnipiac has just dropped its final poll for Pennsylvania. They had Kamala Harris up 2 the last time they polled it. They have Trump up 1 now. The polling average has Trump slightly ahead in Pennsylvania right now. It's virtually tied, but again, and this is the thing I keep coming back to, even if you're overstating one side or the other in your baseline polling, the trend lines are important. And the trend line right now is momentum shifting towards Donald Trump, and that is significant. Showing that momentum moving to Donald Trump is important to see. Let me tell you what's also important. Hillsdale College. If you go to ericforhillsdale.com today, you can sign up for Hillsdale College and get a free pocket Constitution and Declaration of Independence. You can also get Imprimis completely for free. I really do want to spend a moment here and tell you about Imprimis, because I finished reading my copy. It's not long. I've just been busy. Imprimis comes in your mailbox, and it is filled with thoughtful commentary, the transcripts of speeches with appropriate apostrophes from Hillsdale College. If you go to ericforhillsdale.com and you put in your information, you get that pocket Constitution, but then you can sign up for Imprimis. I have been getting it since I was in law school, and I've never paid a penny for it. It comes regularly to my mailbox. It is always insightful. It is just, it's thoughtful. It's intellectual show prep for your brain. It keeps you in touch with the trend lines of the conservative movement. You go to ericforhillsdale.com, E-R-I-C-K, ericforhillsdale.com, get Imprimis, get the pocket Constitution, start a relationship with Hillsdale College today at ericforhillsdale.com. Hello there. Welcome. It is Eric Erickson here across the United States. The phone number is 877-973-7425. If you would like to be on the program, I am happy to have you with me. Philip just sent me some audio by Joe Rogan. Let me load this here so we can listen to him talk about Kamala Harris. I'm sorry. Okay, that's an inside joke there. Philip sends me this and says, "Oh, it's from Joe Rogan talking about Kamala Harris." And then I get in all caps, "Do not play, do not play." Bad word in it. Joe Rogan essentially says he if you don't know, Kamala Harris told Joe Rogan he could come to her and have an hour if he wanted her on the podcast. And he's like, "That's not what I do. People come to me to Austin, Texas, and they stay as long as the conversation goes." And so, Philip, I'm sorry. Joe Rogan's not the only one uttering F-bombs now. I had him panic there. Rogan says, no, does Kamala Harris really want to be president of the United States? She's struggling with men, so much so she was called on a hot mic with Gretchen Whitmer. saying that she's struggling with men. Her campaign has put out some ridiculous commercials, as have progressive groups trying to get men. Haven't been able to. And listen, if you're having a problem with men, I don't listen to Joe Rogan because I have a life and want my time. But man, do I know a lot of people who listen to his 3-hour conversations with me. I'm not going to give. I don't give myself. I don't go back and listen to myself on the radio. I don't want to listen to anybody else. I mean, God bless him for what he does. He's got a massive audience, clearly engaging. I just don't want to listen to a 3-hour conversation. I got plenty of other stuff, but he's got a massive audience. And if you want to connect to men, you're having problems with them, go be on his program. That she's not makes me question, what is she actually doing? All right, phone call here. Liz, I want to go to you. Welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Great. What's going on?
My comment was just, we've gotten cards and we've seen ads on TV that talk about who you vote for is private, but if you voted is public. And the commercials will say your friends and neighbors can check if you voted in the election. And to me, that just seems like a light intimidation kind of thing. And I don't know how Get Out the Vote places can use that kind of language.
Okay. That is actually, I'm so glad you called and asked that question, Liz. Let me explain this one to everyone, because this is actually a tactic pioneered by Barack Obama, who, he talks about bringing civility. He doesn't know why people are divided. In 2012, Barack Obama's campaign, at the very end of the campaign, sent individually printed mail pieces to individuals saying, your neighbor voted Republican and you haven't voted yet. And would send a map of the neighborhood in some cases, showing the neighbors who voted and did they vote Republican or not. And people filed complaints against the Obama team for doing this, and there's really no law against it. Here's what they were doing. When you go vote in your state, everyone can see that you, Liz, voted. They can't see who you voted for. But if you voted in a primary, they can see if you voted in a Republican primary or a Democratic primary. And that's what the Obama team was doing. They were looking at your primary vote, saying, oh, this person's going to be a Republican. They've already voted. You better go vote. And it freaked a lot of people out. It divided a lot of people. Suddenly people realized, oh, my gosh, my neighbor's a Republican, really? And people have been doing it on both sides ever since. But that's what they're doing. I find it detestable that either side would do this and pit neighbor against neighbor, disrupt civil harmony in local communities of I got to go stop my neighbor. That guy turns out to be a Trump supporter. Oh my gosh, or that person's voting for Harris. But it's what they can do. It's perfectly legal for them to do it, even as I dislike it. And I got a real problem with, and it's Democrats and Republicans. Now, Obama pioneered it. Yes, that is true. But Democrats and Republicans together are doing this now. I find it to be a terribly divisive thing to do, particularly as the nation is as divided as it is right now. But there's nothing that I or anyone else can do to stop them, I'm afraid. And that gives me massive amounts of concern that we're in this situation. And there's no way around it at this point, which is sad to see. Now, let me move on to other stuff, because we do have other things we got to talk about. But my suspicion is, I'm going to go with my gut here. And I'm going to suggest that when we're 6 days towards the end, let's hear at the end of this review where the data is. The data can be wrong. And a lot of the data right now is polling data, and polling data itself is not always as precise as we need it to be. And as I have told you guys for a very long time, here's the way I look at polling. I don't look at the bottom line number. What I look at is the trend line. The trend line tells you things. Now, here's why. let's say your poll has oversampled Trump voters. I don't think that's likely, but let's say your poll has oversampled Trump voters. Even so, if the trend line in your poll goes from Trump 10 to Trump 9 to Trump 7 to Trump 5 to Trump 4 to Trump 1, even though your poll has oversampled Trump's voters, you can see that the momentum has shifted to Kamala Harris because you started at Trump 10 and now you're all the way down to Trump 1. You're oversampling Trump voters. We can't really tell that, but we can see the trend line. When a pollster starts polling likely voters, they don't change their sample. So if in the last poll they polled 34% of Democrats and 35% Republicans, the rest independents, this time they're going to do the same thing. They're not going to shake up their model every time they poll. So when you've polled, let's say 40% Trump supporters, 30% Harris supporters, 30% independents, and you've started at Trump 10 and then 9 and then 7 and then 5 and then 4 and then 1, doesn't matter that you oversampled Trump voters. Your trend line is clearly for Kamala Harris. In the opposite, let's say you oversampled Kamala Harris supporters by 10 points. And she started at, she was up 5, and then she's up 6, and then she's up 7, and then she's up 10. You know the momentum, even though they're oversampled, people in the poll who aren't Kamala Harris supporters are clearly shifting in her direction. You see the momentum. So what does the momentum show us in the polling averages? The Real Clear Politics polling average now has Donald Trump up 0.4%. And in the battleground states, he's up 0.9%. And the momentum shift has been in his direction. He's now up 2.5 points in Arizona. He's up 0.5 of a point in Nevada. He's up 0.7 in Pennsylvania. He's up 1 in North Carolina. He's up 2.4 in Georgia. He's only behind in Wisconsin in the polling average, and that's 0.2 of a point. In Michigan, it's 0.5 of a point. For a total average of 0.9. Now, that's kind of an irrelevant number. You got to look at the internal and the state polling, but he's up in these states. He's up the highest in Arizona. He's up the lowest in Nevada. The trend lines have been for Donald Trump, and that's kind of the point. So you had Trump up 2, and then Harris up 1, and then Trump up 1, and then a tie, and then Trump up 1, and these are the various pollsters, gives him a Trump 5. The CNN polling in particular, let's just look at the CNN polling in Nevada. It was Harris up 1, and now it's Trump up 1. Atlas Intelligence, it was Harris up 3, and then it was a tie, and now it's Trump up 1. Trafalgar, which I tend to be skeptical of, it was Trump up 3, and that was back when Biden was still in the race, and it was Harris up 1, and then Harris up 1, and now it's a tie. Or let's look at the Bloomberg poll. It was Harris up 4, and then Harris up 7, and then Harris up 1. All of the shift has been towards Donald Trump in Nevada. You can see it graphed out. You can see in the national trend lines right now. Nationally, the momentum has shifted to Donald Trump. Now, it is true. It is 100% accurate to say that public polling lags private polling. But by now, this close to the end, we should be seeing some real momentum shifting polls, and we really haven't. So let's just take the overarching, but let's take Reuters. Reuters has nationwide, Reuters has Harris up 1. In September, it was Harris up 6. In October, it was Harris up 3. And now it's Harris up 1. They haven't changed their pool of model voters. They've expanded the pool of voters, but they haven't changed the model. It's still 35% this group, 34% this group, the rest this group. It's the same number of young people, the same number of old people, the same number of black people, the same number of white people. They may have added to the number, but they haven't changed the percentages. And what you see is this momentum shift towards Donald Trump. I can't tell you how the election's going to turn out. I can tell you it's exceedingly close, but I can tell you we're not seeing a shift in the momentum away from Trump right now. It hasn't happened. The tip poll, it had Harris up 4, and now it has Harris up 1. The morning consult poll, which I think is a garbage poll, by the way, it's an online poll. It was Harris up 6, and then it was Harris up 5, and then it was Harris up 4, and now it's Harris up 3. That's a poll that I don't find accurate, but you get my point. You see the momentum. The CBS poll, Harris up 4, then Harris up 3, now Harris up 1. We're not seeing a swing back towards Harris. And then let's look at the campaigns. The Donald Trump campaign had the unforced error on Sunday night with the comedian, but Joe Biden has been the gift that keeps on giving for the Trump campaign ever since. Kamala Harris had her major speech last night. Kamala Harris stood in front of the White House out on the National Mall with the White House and that fountain at the White House as her backdrop. That was the scene on the mall last night. She had a roaring crowd there with her. And what is the coverage today? The coverage today is this.
Or Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, they're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
That's what people are talking about today. That's what people are talking about at NBC. That's what people are talking about at MSNBC. That's what people are talking about at Fox. That's what people are talking about at CNN. They're not talking about Kamala Harris's closing argument speech. They're talking about Joe Biden calling Trump supporters garbage. 6 days before the election, the president of the United States, late in the day on the 7th day, he didn't rest. He called Trump supporters garbage. He should have rested like God Almighty. Joe Biden should have learned his lesson and rested on the 7th day instead of opening his mouth. God bless him for speaking out. It does not do anything to help Kamala Harris and does a lot to help Donald Trump. That's the polling trends 6 days before the election. But there's something else you need to know. If you're not voting, you're part of a trend, but it's not a good trend. You have time to vote. You can vote. In many states, you can vote this week. In every state, you can vote Tuesday next week. You can vote. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. You know my opinion on the matter. What I am going to do is I'm going to tell you that you can vote. It is easy to vote, hard to cheat in a lot of states. The trend lines may be in favor of your candidate, maybe not. The only way you can affect them is to go vote. Americans for Prosperity is out getting people to go vote. My buddy Dan McLaughlin at National Review actually has a fantastic piece up about the AFP ground game where they've trained activists to knock on doors, target people who aren't frequent regular voters, and get them out to vote. And they're doing a remarkable job. They would love to have you on their team. They have chapters in virtually every state. You can go to americansforprosperity.org/volunteer today and sign up with them. They got chapters in every state. Now, listen, it's going to be too late for you to be trained up to be a door knocker, but here's what they'll do. They're going to give you the latest information on conservative policy solutions in the country. They're going to give you the information you need to advocate for those policy solutions, and they're going to get you engaged. If you go to americansforprosperity.org/volunteer today, you can sign up with Americans for Prosperity. You, my friends, can be part of AFP. They're the largest leading grassroots organization in the country. They'd love to have you on board, energizing the fight for freedom in this country, energizing Americans across the country, getting them involved to support free markets and families and school choice and border security. americansforprosperity.org/volunteer. Howdy, welcome. It is Eric Erickson here. I have ordered myself a new laptop. Thank you, Apple, for coming out with the MacBook Pros today. My R key and my F key are just almost completely dead. Multiple presses to get an F, get an R, even the E, and then all the soundboard problems. But that's different. tech problem. I'm just y'all. I need this election to be over. I got people who are texting me constantly, and I know Philip and Charlie keep telling me I should get a new cell phone number. And the problem is that all the people who constantly text me are the people who would get the new phone number. And so I've never gotten the new phone number. Now I'm starting to realize as well, like if I want to get onto a bank website, one of my bank websites or something, the identification stuff goes to my cell phone. Like, here's your 6-digit number going to your cell phone. And what if I get a new cell phone number and suddenly I'm having to do these authorization codes and they're going to the old number? Between that and all the people causing the problems are the people that I just need people to like delete my phone. Because good gracious, I'm overwhelmed at this point. We're at the point of, what are you hearing? What are you hearing? What do you know? You know what? You want my answer? I should have an auto reply. Listen noon to 3 Eastern every weekday, and I'll tell you instead of texting me in the middle of the show, what's your super secret data, Erickson? I don't have super secret data. I tell you people exactly what I think and what I know. I don't keep secrets from you, and that gets me in trouble with some of you. I'm still getting hate mail from people for stuff I said yesterday that they found critical of Donald Trump, even as I said, I think you should support him. His policies are better than Kamala Harris, but oh my gosh, you mentioned his marriages. How dare you? People's nerves have started fraying. We have 6 days until this infernal election is over. It is going to be like a life goal for you people to keep your sanity. And it's going to be hard to do. There are people working overtime out there to cost you your sanity, to drive you insane, to make you lose your mind. They're doing it to me as well. Don't let them do it. We got 6 days left. 6 days left. Now, before I get out of here, let me pull this data for you because I think you'll be impressed with it. The amount of people who have early voted nationwide, I got a special source I rely on that can give me the updated data. As of 45 minutes ago, 58.1 million people have voted. 58.1 million people, over 1 million people in Wisconsin. That's impressive. Keep your wits about you, people. The next 5 days are going to be absolutely insane, and calm down.